feel comfortable with what the Niners have at receiver if Deebo Samuel cannot be healthy for the first 1 to 4 weeks into the season?
Let me put it this way. For most teams, no. I mean, it's not a good wide receiver core. It's banged up. It's unproven. But for Kyle Shanahan, who is supposed to be the most creative offensive coach in the league or up there, and he is, it should be enough. He's got the running game. He has tight ends. He should be able to figure it out. And I think this is a great opportunity for him to show how creative he can be. I think a lot of people are thinking about it like, well, who's he just going to plug into Deebo's spot? Who's just going to plug right in and do all the stuff Deebo does? Like, I don't think that's what a creative coach does. You could just throw Brandon Ayuk there week 1 and say, go get him. Or you could reconfigure your offense a little bit and say, well, okay, my wide receivers aren't so good and really none of them have earned starting roles. Maybe I could feature my tight ends and running backs. Maybe I could go with some packages like 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, and 1 wide receiver. Why throw a bunch of wide receivers on the field if you don't need to? You're a run first team anyway. You wouldn't have the end around and jet sweep package that you would with more wide receivers on the field, but you could really muscle up and move some defenses. And as they muscle up to combat that, then the play action pass becomes so deadly. And what you could do is you could use Travis Benjamin on those play action deep shots. You could use Kendrick Bourne as the 1 wide receiver in the red zone. You could use Trent Taylor as the guy on third downs. There's so many different ways you could use the 1 wide receiver on the field. And sometimes you could be in 22 personnel in tight with the wide receiver, with the quarterback under center, or you could spread out and put the both running backs at wide receiver and put Trent Taylor in the slot and the tight ends in the slot. That's what the Patriots did to beat the Rams in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. That spread 22 personnel. I mean, the Patriots are creative. Josh McDaniels would work around it. A good coach says, well, what do I have? The Niners have so many things. Just because they have 1 banged up wide receiver doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to have a potent offense. And if we look back at last season, the first 7-8 games of the season, they were starting Dante Pettis and they were undefeated. And he wasn't playing well. So I think they should be able to work around this. Kyle is more than clever enough to find out a solution for a month.
Yeah, I think one person that a lot of people aren't talking about in regards to possibly not replacing Deebo, but kind of filling the void if he can't play is Jerick McKinnon. We didn't see him all last year or the last 2 years. If he's healthy, he's shown for a small period of time in his career that he can be a viable option. Obviously, Shanahan loves him enough to keep him around this long and pay him a huge contract when they brought him in 2 years ago. And so I think McKinnon, if healthy, again, it's a big caveat there, if he's healthy, can kind of be the person we haven't seen before and kind of step into a role as a pass-catching back, use him on second down, like you said, maybe in 22 and see what happens. But we know that the Twitter banter between Kendrick Bourne and Des Bryant was pure fun. Apparently it was. Bourne was trying to get a workout with Bryant. But Twitter heated up really fast. Instagram heated up really fast. The rumor mill was turning and kind of lit up. But do you think that the Niners should, if they were to go into preseason and say, hey, well, we have a receiver, even though how great Kyle Shanahan is, we don't have as much as we thought we did. Jalen Hurts injuries kind of coming back up. Trent Taylor isn't what he was a few years ago. And let's hope those things don't happen. But there isn't a lot of depth. It's a bunch of names with I guess, no meat behind it, I guess is how I'll rephrase that. But do you think the Niners should look at someone like Des Bryant? Do you think they should look at another receiver out in the market and say, if these guys aren't working out, we got to get someone in here like a veteran like Des Bryant?
I see what you're saying. Like, you're projecting forward 3 months. Like, if training camp happens and none of the wide receivers really step up or some get hurt, what do you do then? That's fair. Let's go 3 months into the future into that hypothetical where you're right before September and your own guys haven't really stepped up. What are you going to do? I think in that situation, there would be better options than Des Bryant available. The way I look at it this year is there are going to be a bunch of 24, 25 to 26-year-old veterans, maybe former undrafted free agents who have been on the roster bubble of certain teams, but definitely NFL caliber players who are going to get cut probably when they shouldn't. They don't deserve to get cut. But since there's no OTAs in mini camps, there's going to be some of these rookie 6th and 7th round picks who kind of just make the team by default, where every year there's like a 6th round pick or a few that just get played off the team by, like last year, there was Caden Smith, the 6th round pick by the Niners, who got played off the team by Ross Dwelley. Dwelley outplayed him every step of the way, OTAs, minicamp, training camp, and it was clear. This year, a guy like Ross Dwelley wouldn't have the time to prove himself. So those kind of guys are going to get cut, and they'll be available. They'll be young. They'll be talented. They'll be in better shape than Dez Bryant. They'll be cheaper than Dez Bryant. They'll have a more low-key personality than Dez Bryant. I think you can find many better. I don't have any names off the top of my head, but when final cuts come around, I think you'll see any number of wide receivers who would actually be more valuable in 2020 to an NFL team than Dez.
Yeah, one name that comes to mind is Taylor Gabriel. Him and Shanahan have a ton of experience together, and now I don't know what Gabriel's asking price is going to be, but if the hypothetical stands and the injuries are occurring, or there's just not a lot of consistency there, and the Niners feel the receiving room is very unproven, I can easily see Shanahan saying, I want to get another one of my guys, at least in the building, to fill a spot. But Dante Whitner, last week on 957 The Game, you were just on there earlier today, and I work there, so it's kind of the good consistency here is that he advocated for Antonio Brown last week, and we all know Brown's antics. We know the legal trouble he's gotten himself into, and even what he's facing in the future. We know what happened in I guess Las Vegas now, but Oakland last year. But Jerry Rice advocated for him and has kind of since backpedaled a little bit. But despite the risks being higher, I think we can all agree if Antonio Brown's head is on right, he's quiet, which that can be a big asking price for Antonio Brown. But the reward is also so much higher. Do you think that bringing in Antonio Brown is even in the question, or do you feel like it's just a last-ditch effort in case everything goes crazy and the whole receiving room is kind of a mess and the season's going to start and San Francisco goes, we don't have anybody?
Right. Well, I think if you put aside all the legal issues he's had and the possibility that even if any team signed him that he would immediately be suspended by the league and put on the commissioner's exempt list, we don't know. You put all that aside, I think even the best version of Antonio Brown, the most focused, most productive Antonio Brown, still is a me-first guy who's a diva, who would be unhappy after a win in which he only got 8 targets and 4 catches for 40 yards. That's how he is. And I think the Steelers dealt with that for a long time, and they gave him 15 targets a game, and they felt, well, that'll help us win. But they never won a Super Bowl like that. And even giving him all those targets, as soon as they got another wide receiver in Juju Smith-Schuster who was outperforming him for like a season, he lost it and quit the team. That's the way I read it. So I don't know. I mean, it's a run-first team that would like to throw as little as possible. Kyle Shanahan's confidence in Jimmy Garoppolo seems to go through peaks and valleys. And if they can run the ball 45 times and win, they will. Antonio Brown wouldn't stand for that. I still look at him as a guy who wants to prove that he's the greatest wide receiver of all time because his numbers put him in the conversation. So he can always say, look, I was going to be the greatest wide receiver of all time until I got blackballed like Colin Kaepernick for different reasons. If he comes back to the league and is on a team where he's catching 4 passes a game for 40 yards, well, then he can't make the argument that he's the best wide receiver of all time anymore. And I think he'll whine his way off the team like he did with the Raiders. I mean, if a guy's done it twice, why do you think he's not going to do it a third time for you? That just seems like pride talking, messing with you. You know what I mean? Like in Pulp Fiction, that's pride messing with you, man.